Hello there. So, coming up is an interview with Rohini Ross, who is somebody who I'm so pleased that I'm able to read her amazing words pretty much every week. And her husband Angus have a vlog, is that how you pronounce it? They do a video it's released every Friday. And that series is called He Said, She Said. And they are just so much fun together. They really are. And yeah, it's about their lives as a couple and them having this human experience and great wisdom each week um, as they discuss things that have happened to them. And Rohini's blog posts are again about the human experience and how we live from the inside out. And in this interview, she talks about how she first came to understand this inside out experience that we have of life, and the moment when she really got it, and how it was then a game changer, how she then from that point on saw herself in a completely different way, and her business changed, her life changed, well, transformed, I should say. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it. I invite you to listen from within and hear wisdom for yourself and insights for yourself in what you're hearing. And if you care to share what you see and hear in the interview for yourself, then that would be amazing. So yes, enjoy. And oh, one other thing, at the end of the interview we talk about masterminds and how useful they are. Rohini is in one herself, she runs them as well. And as you might have heard already, I have been talking about it. I start a mastermind next week, and it includes the Engaged Space experiment that Rohini Ross and Barbara Patterson are running. So that will be the foundation piece for the mastermind. And it's gonna be great. It's called Let's Dive In, because that's what I'm inviting people to do on this mastermind. It's about taking a project or new business direction or an area of your life that you want to see transform. It's like diving in and seeing what happens. Is there anything else I want to say on that? Well, I'll just put the link to the details in the comments below so that you've got them. And if you'd like to have a conversation with me about it to see if it is a fit for you right now, then great, just let me know, and we'll sort something out very quickly because we start next week. Okay, that's it. Enjoy, and I'd love to hear your comments. Take care. Bye.
It's always such a pleasure to share my work, to share what I'm seeing with people, and I think that it's just been so life-changing in my own life that it is such a joy to be able to point people in a direction that has can have such profound impact. So it's a real pleasure to have this conversation with you. So in terms of how I came across this understanding, it inadvertently came into my life before I even knew about the three principles, because I read the relationship handbook. And that was referred to me by the first coach that I ever worked with, Steve Chandler. And I was going through a lot of stuff with my husband at the time. And so he said, you should read this book. I read the book, and it was very helpful. And I think it really was instrumental in helping us navigate that period and, actually stay together and not split up. But I didn't know, because at that time, the book, it was the first edition. It didn't say anything about what the philosophy was behind it, what the spiritual foundation was behind it. So I didn't go further than that with it. I just sort of said, well, that was nice, and kind of left it there. And so then probably about, 6 or so years later, at that point, I had become licensed as a therapist and was working as a therapist. And I started to get concerned because I was not enjoying my work. and I was feeling burnt out. And I was just thinking, like, I was newly licensed. Like, it was not something that I'd been doing for 20 years. It was like, oh dear, what am I doing here? So a lot of the people that I knew were working as coaches. And so I started to think, like, well, I wonder if coaching would be a better fit for me. Because at this time I was still very much thinking it was all outside of me, that it was about making a change in order for me to feel better. So a coach that I respect recommended Michael Neal's Super Coach Academy as a training. And when I did it, it wasn't a 3 principles training, but they did have one. He had one weekend where George and Linda Pransky, and George was the author of the Relationship Handbook, came to speak. So he had different speakers every weekend, and there was one weekend that was devoted to the 3 principles. And so that's when I first came across it as an understanding. And it was really interesting because that weekend it hit me. Like, I felt the power in what they were saying, but I couldn't really understand what they were saying. Like, I didn't know why it had impacted me. I didn't know why I was so curious about it. I didn't know why I felt so much better. Like, I didn't understand, but I knew that there was something that I wanted to know more about because of the feeling. And I've always been pretty good at trusting that inner knowing inside of me. That's been a really good guide for me over the years. And so I just knew there was something there. And so Michael and I, because, he's in LA, we did some one-on-one work together for a period of time. And I just sort of was getting more of an intellectual understanding. And so the intellectual understanding is sort of understanding that, well, there are 3 principles. They're called mind, consciousness, and thought. And they are ways of explaining how we create our experience from the inside out, and how we have an innate nature that's available to us of peace and well-being. So it was like I was kind of getting it on the intellectual level, and I was having some feeling, but it wasn't quite to the level where I was really able to have impact with clients. Like, I was sharing it with clients, but it wasn't really going very well. And it was kind of a very awkward time because I'd seen enough to realize that this made sense in terms of I want to work this way with clients. But I wasn't really very good at doing it. And I was, in fact, probably better in terms of impact with clients when I wasn't doing that. So it was like, what's happening here? And so I knew that I needed to, deepen my grounding and have a better understanding, and that there definitely was a lot that I wasn't seeing. And I know that there's still, infinite amount that I'm not seeing, but I knew that in order to be of service, I wanted to have a deeper experiential knowing inside of myself. So I was looking at the Pransky mentorship program, and I thought that would be a good next step for me. And I was in conversation with Barb Patterson about it, and there was an opportunity where they had someone coming. It was actually Leela Turner was coming to do an intensive as a facilitator with Linda Pransky, and they needed a guinea pig. They needed a client to come up. And so I said, yeah, I'd love to come up and, I'll be your client. And then they thought it would be a great way to introduce me to the program and see if it was something that I wanted to do. And so I'm like, fine, I'm game. So I went up there for this 4-day intensive, and it was, the whole point of an intensive is that you're kind of out of your normal environment. You're sort of slowed down. It's beautiful in the Conner, Washington. But I didn't really understand any of that at the time. So the way that my work schedule was set up, they asked me to come in the morning, come in the night before so I could come in the morning. And I can't do that. I'm going to be able to fly in the morning, and then, we could start in the afternoon if that works. And they're like, okay. And so, I go to the airport, get on the plane, drive an hour and a half to get to them. So I'm like, I haven't slowed down. I'm like just going. And that was my MO. It was like, no wonder I was feeling burnt out. It's like I was just going, and I didn't see the value in slowing down. Like, that just didn't make any sense to me, because I thought there was somewhere to get to. And I thought that if there's somewhere to get to, the faster I get there, the better it will be. So it was just like, go. So that was kind of how I lived my life. I'm sure I complained about feeling tired, but I didn't put the dots together as to why it might not be a good idea. So anyway, I say that to put into context, like I land in their office, sort of sped up from LA, sped up from the travel. And it didn't even matter that that's how I arrived, because I get in there and Linda and Layla asked me, you know, what is it that you want to get out of these 4 days with us? What would you like to work on? And at the time I was on the leadership team of a behavioral health company. And there were 3 of us, and I know you work in behavioral health. So I was the only one on the leadership team that was willing to do the promotional public speaking engagements. And I was willing to do it because there was something inside of me that knew that I wanted to express myself and wanted to share in that way. But I was so caught up in my head about it. It was excruciating for me. It was excruciating for me ahead of time because I would be nervous ahead of time. And then it was excruciating. You would think, oh, great, it's done. I feel better now. But it was excruciating for me afterwards because I would just get so caught up in negative thinking about what I had done that I couldn't even feel better once it was over. I mean, it's like I didn't feel better once it's over. So it was just, as much as I wanted to do this, and I knew that it was something that I knew that I could enjoy at some point, but I just wasn't enjoying it at the time. So I said, that's what I want to work on. I said, I want to work on feeling less insecure, because this insecurity was just, it felt very painful, especially related to what I was needing to do for this job at the time. So, you know, we had probably an hour and a half conversation that afternoon. And at some point in that conversation, I heard something and saw something in such a way that it fundamentally changed how I saw myself and how I saw life. And I was not expecting that. You know, I had never, you know, I had experienced more incremental change. Like I've absolutely experienced growth and learning before that, absolutely. But I had never experienced it so abruptly. Like that really took me by surprise. I didn't know change could happen like that. I didn't know that from one moment to the next, life could be completely different. And I know that it did happen that way before, but it just, I guess the leaps were just so much smaller that it just felt more incremental. And so what I saw, and this is, I would say, the difference between me having more of an intellectual understanding of the 3 principles and me having a personal insight. Because the principles are a way of describing how we create our reality. But I hadn't really seen something that was that personal to me related to that. And so this was the first time where it became personal. And how it became personal was with relationship to the insecurity. And again, I'm going to say what Linda said. I don't really know if this is what she said. You know, this is the best of my recollection, and it's probably not at all what she said. But it was something along the lines of that I was putting all of my energy into trying to make the insecurity go away. Or I was putting a lot of energy into trying to make the insecurity go away. And when I wasn't able to make it go away, I was then judging myself as having something wrong with me, as broken, as damaged, as unfixable, as not good enough, like all of these judgments of unworthiness, because I couldn't make the insecurity go away. So all she did was help me see that what I was trying to do was a fool's errand, because insecurity is a normal part of the human experience. It's not something that any of us can erase from our repertoire of emotions. It's going to come up from time to time. And I don't need to change that. It will take care of itself without me putting any effort into trying to change it. And in fact, I'll suffer a whole lot less when I'm not putting energy into trying to change it, because when I'm trying to change the illusion of feeling insecure, like I'm feeling the reality of feeling insecure coming from these illusory thoughts that aren't true, that if I try to do anything with those thoughts. I'm just making them more real. I'm making them stick around longer. Like I'm just getting myself stuck even deeper. And that I am the source of all of that suffering. And I'd seen that intellectually, but I just saw it like, oh my God, I am the source of my suffering. I am doing this to myself, and I don't need to do this to myself. And I didn't see the choice point before. And so I just saw the choice point. And what I saw was that, one, there's nothing, it doesn't mean anything about me that I feel insecure. And my natural state of well-being is something I will always come back to, and I don't ever have to be afraid that I won't come back to it. That it's just how I'm designed, how we are all designed as human beings, to come back to our feelings of well-being, to come back to our feelings of peace of mind, and that it's absolutely okay to not be in that experience all the time. And see, I had thought that by sort of being a spiritual seeker and wanting to experience my true nature more fully, like I was under the misunderstanding that somehow that would mean, if that was working, that I would not have these negative emotions, that I would not feel insecure, that somehow enlightenment was about me getting rid of all the things I didn't like about myself. And what I saw in that meeting, and really an hour and a half, and it probably happened halfway through, so it's like very short time, I saw that I was completely looking at it the wrong way. And that instead of me having a deeper understanding of my true nature changing me in any way, what it did was it allowed me to be okay with me exactly as I was, without needing to change in any way. And so that was like a 1,000 trillion ton weight just lifted off of me, because that had been how I had lived my life for most of my life. It's, all that I can remember, feeling driven to improve myself, thinking that's what I needed to do, like thinking somehow that was my responsibility. That was what I was supposed to do, is just work on getting better. And so to have that completely taken off the table just freed up so much bandwidth to be like, oh, well, now what? And so on those 4 days, like I kind of spent the rest of the 4 days just being in that, wow, now what? And with the work that I was doing, like I'd gone on a retreat, I'd sort of booked myself out, I'd made sure that I didn't have to, have any responsibilities during that time. And I was in this amazing, peaceful state of mind, this just feeling so filled up with my own loving well-being, like just incredibly beautiful feelings. And it was funny because it was so unusual for me that I'm like, well, can I go on a walk? Like, I didn't want it to go away, and I could see that I was kind of attached to the feeling of it. But it was just so like, well, how does this work? How does this happen? Like, what's going to go on here? And as I just kind of did my day to day, I'm like, oh, it's still here. This is interesting. And then I started to feel really called to do some work. Like, I actually wanted to get some things done. I didn't want to just be on retreat. And so I just thought, well, I guess I'll see if I can do some work and see how that goes. And what I saw was that I was in such a clear state of mind with no sort of loud thinking going on at the time, that it was just effortless. And things that I had been avoiding doing because they looked annoying, or I was like, oh, it's going to take a lot of work. I was just like, what's the big deal here? Just do it, And it's like, wow, this is amazing to see what performance is like from a quiet state of mind. Like, this is just so practical. Like, I had never realized how practical and common sense it was. And so I just saw from that experience how I don't have to be afraid. I mean, this is one of the famous Sydney Banks quotes. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's like, when human beings see that they don't have to be afraid of their experience, that changes everything. Like, I really got less afraid of my experience and more accepting of my humanness. And when I did that, it just quieted a whole bunch of noise that was sort of telling me that it wasn't true. And that just disappeared, just completely disappeared. And so it's not like I necessarily live in that same level of peak experience day to day that I was having then. But I also don't know how much of it is I just got used to being in that state of mind. So it's not like this crazy weird thing, because I know my mind is a lot quieter now, and it hasn't gone back to what it was before. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't have moments of intense emotional suffering at times, that I don't get upset. Like that to me was the game changer, to see that nothing needs to change. I can be my human self with all of my weaknesses, insecurities, limitations, but just not needing to change that shrinks all of that down to size so that I can enjoy much more all of the other parts. And it's not even that they're wrong or bad. If they appear that way to me, it's only because I'm judging it that way. It's not truth. It's just what I'm making up. So in terms of the impact from that, there was a ripple effect that happened in my entire life. Like it impacted every single area of my life in a positive way. And there are certain areas that really stand out for me in terms of significant change. And I think the other areas, like say my relationship with my kids, like they're all already pretty good. So it's like it wasn't so dramatic, like there was a big change there. But in terms of work, that was a huge area for me, because as I said, I've been feeling burnt out. I've been feeling like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't, all of this sort of internal stress that I thought was coming from what I was doing. All of a sudden I saw that it was absolutely coming from inside of me, and that it actually didn't matter what I did, that I didn't need to be in an experience of driving myself and feeling stressed out. Like that was purely on me and having nothing to do with what I was doing. And so here I was thinking that I'm, transitioning from being a therapist to only doing coaching. And I fell in love with, therapy again. So it's like, oh, well, I guess I'm not going to give that up, but maybe I'll do it sort of as a smaller amount. And I'm still going to do the coaching because I love the coaching. And not only can I do the coaching with people from, seeing how this understanding applies to everything, is that, oh, I can go in and work with businesses too. So I started working with corporate clients. So it just opened up the playing field. And for me, I love to be learning. I love the change that comes from, jumping into something new. So that was so exciting to see that I can just, be constantly jumping into new things, because this is going to be helpful in those areas. So it just gave me a whole new experience related to work, so that I could just love what I was doing. And just recently, I saw this more deeply in terms of the loving what we're doing. So, and that Barb Patterson and I do a solopreneur mastermind, and we were getting ready for one of the weekly meetings, and we both do a little teaching piece at the beginning, and the focus was going to be on engagement and what are we seeing related to engagement and how that's beneficial in terms of our businesses. And as I was reflecting on that, what I saw was that I had these limits that I'd been putting on certain activities related to my work. So there's certain things with my work that I engage in, and it's just joy. And then there's other things that I'm like, I don't really like engaging in that. But, so those are always the things I leave and, do when I have to, rather than because I want to. And what I saw was that that's made up. My idea that I don't like doing those things is actually made up. And the way that I saw it was, I remembered a conversation that I'd had with George Pransky, and it was like something completely unrelated, but this was a while ago, and it was when I was doing the mentorship program. And George, Linda, and Barb were going out to see a movie that night, and I was up there doing it, and they asked me if I wanted to go. And they told me the movie, and the movie, that they were going to see like bombed in the critics. Like it was just like, I don't know, it was not a good movie according to the critics. And as soon as I heard what movie they're going to see, I'm like, no, I don't want to see that movie. I'm not going. And then George had a conversation with me that went completely over my head at the time, and it impacted me when I was thinking about this recent mastermind call. But what he said to me was something like, you know, Rohini, it's like, he was using an example of his sister, how she can be very critical about movies or books. Like she has really high standards about certain things, and unless it's of a certain caliber, she can't enjoy it. And what I see now, he was kind of saying, that's you, talking about you, and that you have made up standards that unless a movie is this way, that you won't enjoy it. So again, that's completely outside in. And so what I saw was like, oh, but it's not just about movies that I make that up. It's also about certain activities that I do with my business, like whether it's it's mostly the administrative stuff. And it's like I had this made up idea that administrative stuff is not something that I can enjoy. And I saw that, oh, that's not the administrative stuff. That's me deciding that ahead of time. And that what I always find is when I get to doing it, it's actually fine and it's not a problem. But I saw on a deeper level that the things that I had made up, I wasn't going to enjoy. I wasn't enjoying them, not because of what they are, but because of what I was believing and telling myself. And that when I open that up to just being in the moment, doing whatever it is I'm doing, I can get filled up and be in that spaciousness no matter what. So I was like, wow, that is amazingly freeing. And to bring that back to engagement, to see that when we recognize that we can love doing anything, it doesn't mean that we have to do everything, but to have the freedom to love doing anything, it helped me see that I'm going to be able to love my business and nurture my business in a whole different way than I was before, because I was withholding from it. It's kind of like being in a relationship and, you know, you like all these parts about your partner and there's some things you just don't really like. And, you know, being withholding about that. Like I'd been kind of that way with my business. And it's like, no, I love all of it. It's all wonderful. It's just different. So that's kind of fresh, and it just feels really exciting, and a deeper understanding for myself about how truly our experience comes from within and not from what's going on outside, and that it's a reflection of our thoughts, and that we can always have the possibility of seeing through those thoughts, recognizing those thoughts, seeing through them to seeing something fresh and new and different. And that just keeps happening. And it happens for all of us, whether we know it or not, but it just keeps happening. And so it's exciting to just kind of realize that, oh, today I get to see this, and another day I'm going to see something else new, and that life gets better as a result of that. So I know I've talked a lot, so I want to give you some time for response or questions or anything, or tell me to keep going. I don't know.
Oh, I love listening to you. It was an amazing journey that you took us on there, really detailed. I could like visualize all of it. So thank you for sharing so much. I guess one thing, just picking up on what you were talking about at the end there, the thoughts that I was having, I was agreeing with you because I do know it to be true, but then I was also getting that kind of little voice saying, well, if we can enjoy everything, because our experience is coming from the inside out, so we can enjoy whatever we're doing, then surely that means that, for example, I currently work a few hours a week for a company, but really I feel more drawn to developing my business and working more with this type of work, pointing people to the truth of what and who they are, and being free from limitations, from knowing this inside out understanding. So somebody that is in a job or self-employed, but they kind of feel that they're not enjoying it and want to try something new, how do you kind of explain
that in what is my question? I guess it's that thing about, where people talk about alignment, where you kind of feel more aligned with something than something else.
Yeah.
And I feel that my answer is that wisdom tells you kind of opportunities, if you allow life to live through you, the opportunities appear as if by magic. but they do, and you get for me, I just get this inspired action, and then I can choose whether to take it or not.
Yeah.
Would you agree that that's kind of what happens? It's like, yes, we can enjoy everything because our experiences is from the inside out, but there is still this kind of something guiding us.
I would absolutely agree. And I really relate to the example that you're sharing, because at the time that I had that insight, that was when I was still working with a behavioral health company. And I knew that I was going to be moving on, and just, I had a part-time practice at that time, but I knew that I wanted that to become my full-time work. But what I didn't see was that I didn't need to not be enjoying what I was doing in order to leave. And what I also didn't know was the timing. And so what happened with me is I could feel what you're describing as that inner pull and that inner calling. But I was experiencing it as, because I knew that that was the direction I wanted to go in, that somehow I needed to make that happen quickly. Or, well, if I want that, then why isn't that now? And and so I was taking myself out of the moment because I was thinking I should be somewhere that I wasn't actually at in that moment. And so when I saw that was just making me miserable, and I was not enjoying what I was doing, not because of what it was, but because of all this pressure that I was putting on myself, and all of the sort of ideas that I should be further ahead than I was. That was really what was creating my suffering around it at that point. And so when I just settled into, okay, it's not now. I know it's going to happen, but I don't know when it's going to happen. And why not just be present, enjoy it as it is in this moment, and know that when I get more information, when I get that feedback that you're saying, it just kind of shows up when the opportunities reveal themselves, then I'll take action on them. And what happened was, and it was about 18 months before I left. And previous to that, I'd given in my notice, and they basically didn't accept it and talk me back in. But it was it just wasn't the right time. And then for that 18 months, I could have been miserable for that whole 18 months. But instead, it was I loved it. I just kind of fell in love with all of it again. But at that point, there was a very clear indicator to me that said, now it's time. And it was based on, my practice was growing at a certain rate that it was just getting too difficult to do both. It was based on family stuff that was going on with one of my daughters, where I knew that I needed to be more present than I was, based on the transition that she was going through into high school. And so it was just a no-brainer. It's I can't keep doing all of this. It's time for me to leave this and do that. And I literally had the conversation. I had the thought. I had the conversation with my two co-leaders in the company. They were completely on board. Within, half an hour, we had worked out the exit plan, and over the next couple of months, I transitioned out. So it's I could have been miserable waiting for that to happen, or I could just enjoy what I was doing, and then that's going to happen anyway. That's for me, in terms of, it's not either or. Love the moment, because that love comes from inside. It doesn't come from what we're doing, how we're showing up. It's really coming from inside of us. And we're still going to be guided to what is really being called forward. And I think it's probably even easier to hear that when we're not in the noise of, our disgruntledness about whatever's going on.
Yeah, I love that. And to finish the call, what I love, it kind of naturally feels like it's moving into, because you also mentioned about the masterminds that you run.
Yes.
So when we do get that call, I personally have experienced how useful it can be to be with other people that also are looking to bring something new out into the world, a project or new business direction, or even a change in their life, some transformation in their life or a particular area. And as you know, I've just put together a mastermind which came to me, and I really wanted to have an element of other experts within it, and then saw your Engaged Space experiment that's running throughout October. So I'd love you either to just speak to what's so wonderful in your experience of being in a mastermind, or being having this foundation of what we're covering in the Engage, you're covering in the, sorry, make it clear, I'm not part of the faculty of the Engaged Space experiment. I will be taking part in it, but I can't wait. But yeah, I were to speak to the usefulness of being in a mastermind to bring an idea out into the world, or to talk a little bit about the Engaged Space, I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah. Well, this Barb Patterson and we're on our third mastermind this fall, and we both are in a mastermind ourselves. So we've been in a mastermind for a couple of years, and we were getting so much out of the experience that we sort of talked about various projects that we were looking at and realized, like, why don't we bring that together and do something together and create this mastermind for solopreneurs? And the idea behind it is that when we as people come together in a group, there's the sum is greater than the parts. There's just an amazing group energy that is greater than who we are, and I think helps us just drop into our true nature more easily by being part of that group energy. And with a mastermind that has kind of a focus, we're all looking in the same direction, having that conversation. So the ones that Barb and I facilitate, we're really looking at how to help people take their business or their idea to the next level. And what that requires is being able to see beyond what they already see, because we already do what we know. So we can have incremental change in what we know, like where there can be slight improvement based on tweaking things. But if we want to really take it to the next level, we have to see something new and different that we haven't seen before. Now, in my experience, when you're part of a group in the conversation, all looking in the same direction, it makes it more likely. It makes it more fun. And there's just such a stimulation that happens in that experience. And it's like, it's beyond what I can explain. I can't explain it, but I just know from the experience, and as you do your programs, how that happens. And it's just to me, it's such an enjoyable way of coming together and seeing what the implications are of this understanding in very practical ways. And we focus on business in that. And to recognize that it's not, it is a spiritual understanding, but it's not separate from common sense. It's extremely practical, and it really has very real world results that are just, oftentimes surprising and shocking. Like my experience in terms of like, wow, I had no idea that by seeing what I saw, that was going to take my work to a whole other level. And so that, that's just such a fun thing to be witnessing and experiencing with others.
Brilliant. Sorry, I just had to unmute, but I muted myself because the twins are about to have their bath, which is nearby.
That's great.
I can hear them getting ready. One of the things in the story that you shared with us really spoke to me, because I was very much on that kind of spiritual path and had that misunderstanding also about my humanness. And what I have found with the 3 principles understanding is I've seen my spiritual being and my humanness where they come together, where that alignment is, and that my humanness is absolutely fine the way it is. It's designed this way. You know, we live in the feeling of thought in the moment, and yes, we can get caught up in making that means different things, and it moves us away from our spirit, you know, our true nature. But we, like you say, we naturally come back to it.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's fine. Yeah. There's nothing, I don't need to do anything. When I move away, I don't need to do anything, because I will naturally course correct, because that's part of it. So that is definitely what I saw as well. And I'm so grateful to have seen it, because it is changing my business. I attempted to start a business in 2013, and it didn't happen. I was outside in trying to learn how to run an online business, investing in this course, and then thinking, oh, well, I must need to invest in another course. Before I knew it, I'd invested thousands and thousands of pounds, but still didn't have a business. And I just didn't know what was going on. Now I completely know what went on there, and now it's completely just so different. It's effortless productivity.
Yeah. That's great. And everything that you learned before, it's all going to serve you. You know, it's all there for you.
Of course, I have all of those investments. They're all still there. And I know when I look at them, I'm going to be looking at them through these new lenses that I have, which is brilliant.
Absolutely. And just in terms of what you're saying earlier about, you know, we have our alignment, and then, you know, we get caught up in our thinking. It's like we actually are always aligned. It just we don't always feel it, right? And so that's why we don't need to worry, because we never really not in alignment. We can't not be spiritual beings having a human experience. Like, that's just it. End of story. We can't mess it up.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's sometimes it's the weird thing about trying to explain something. Yeah. It can, you know, people can take it quite literally what you say. It's like, no, don't listen to what I'm saying. Yeah, hear the truth behind what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, we're not saying truth. We're doing our best to share our experience, but everybody will feel their own knowing. Everybody will feel their own wisdom. And that's also, I think, so important, is that I'm not saying anything in the content of my words that's helpful, but I'm hoping that it's pointing to something that people will see within themselves, that they already know, that they already have. Like you're saying, like you see now that you did those courses, but you needed to see something inside. And now these courses are going to serve you in a whole different way after seeing that. But that was inside of you.
Yeah. Wow. I think that's a lovely place to end. I'm so excited about joining you on the Engage Space experiment. So we're only a week away.
Yeah, it starts October 2nd. So Barb and I are thrilled. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So I do hope to. Well, I know already that there's a couple of people in the group that will be joining me on the mastermind and joining you. So I'm hoping for a few more to join us as well. So,
fantastic.
Thank you so much, Rohini. It's been just gorgeous talking with you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I loved having this conversation with you.